So thank you to both of you for taking the time to do this and sharing your wisdom and thoughts. And part of this is going to be very collaborative. They've got a PowerPoint which will be available to everyone after the session. And then we'll open it up at the end to questions and answers. So we can do that. You can unmute yourself, or we can also do it through the chat function. But I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to them and thank them again for saying yes to my request to come in and present on this topic. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Carol and I are very excited about this. For those that haven't heard me talk about it, you're going to see and hear the passion I have for this particular channel, and that the results that Northridge has had since we instituted it about 2.5, 3 years ago. There's been a lot going on behind the scenes on this digital footprint channel, the digital channel pre-COVID. So if you think about it this way, the research shows that about 70% of our sales force were still road warriors with sales being done with direct sales. That leaves 30%, and we're going to walk you through a lot of changes in procurement that make this channel very, very effective. B2B buyers have already accepted remote selling. Customers' expectations changed due to B2C practices and personal online purchasing habits. And the majority of B2B customers do not request 2 to 3 meetings before they are ready to buy, and they are harder to reach. Buyers educate themselves online when they're ready and reach out to companies that they trust with superior online content. We're going to go through a lot of this today and show you some of the results. Again, pre-COVID, these important trends have been taking place. Buyers increase their reliance on digital channels for buying process. Carol will go into this in a little bit more detail. 93 to 94% of buyers use digital sources through their entire buying journey. Buyers complete more of the buying process without meeting with the seller physically, and buyers complete 70% of their online buying process without the vendor contact knowing about it. When you think about a salesperson representing your firm, one of the interesting aspects of digital, and when Carol gets into all the different aspects of it, you're going to see is that you're not reliant on one single salesperson's ability to tell your story. Telling your story online gives you an opportunity to perfect it, change it, and update it continuously. Risk and dependencies on a single salesperson also are mitigated. And it gives your prospect more time to get to know you when it's convenient for them and compare you to your competitors. Probably needed that line on there. So now you're in a COVID world, which makes this even more important. Quarantines are unknown, travel restrictions are known, and social distancing measures are also in place. For companies reliant on in-person sales models, it's time to reprioritize your investment. Shift more budget, and I say budget, marketing and sales, into your digital marketing efforts. More support for a smaller sales force. Inside sales reps are easier to train, supervise, and share best practices. When Carol and I sought out to put this together over the last week, she asked me to talk about Northridge's digital experience. And one of the things that drove Northridge into a real in-depth digital marketing plan was that our sales were shrinking in the direct sales channel, and the number of sales calls we had to do to close a deal had tripled. So we started to look at the effectiveness of our direct sales force and started to integrate the account management into our delivery. And we put a big investment from shrinking our sales force into digital marketing. And digital marketing and marketing per se didn't have a big enough seat at the table or voice when we started this process. There were a lot of naysayers internally, people that thought getting rid of direct sales force was absolutely crazy. And many of those people did leave. But I'd like to share the results that we've had. And it says January 18, but we did put this program in place in 2017. And these are the results that we've had so far. 44% of our revenue came from digital marketing RFPs last year. That's huge for us. Networking has always been the primary, and networking I would call direct sales, has always been our primary sales over 20 years. That would have been in the 80s or 90%. Now it's down to 34%. Our channel partner effectiveness has grown as well. That comes from our partners being able to relate to our content to their customers and get involved that way. We've always had revenue from new acquisitions, and then strong service delivery is accountable for our repeat business. But if you think about, and I'm going to change to the next slide, we used to get RFPs. If we didn't have a direct salesperson that knew the company that was asking for it, you knew that you didn't stand a big chance or a good chance of winning the RFP. But since we got heavy into digital and put our content online and did more of our sales presentation online, 25% of our RFPs were driven by digital leads. If you think about 44% of our revenue coming from digital leads, RFPs, it's huge. And procurement departments are doing their homework online, even if you're talking about large companies, because some of the RFPs we've won are in the Fortune 50 and 20. This is a very, very compelling story. Now I'm going to hand it over to Carol. I was supposed to spend my time on why you should look at this, and now she's going to take over and how.
Thanks, Therese. It's great joining you all today. I think that as we get into the remaining slides and really talk about what are some of the best practices with digital and for companies of all sizes, whether it's, and of course, are assuming mid-sized companies as we have this conversation today, but there's some elements we're going to talk about that apply to everyone in terms of high performance digital. And also we're going to, have plenty of time for questions to us as well. So we talk about, digital marketing and building off, which is really impressive experience when Therese shared this with me a couple years ago, as a marketer looking at, okay, what is really essential now? And so as we look at the experience of looking at procurement, it's just really important to think about procurement departments are all over the world. And so you're going to have companies of all sizes that, have departments that are doing this research whenever they care to, because it's easy to access. It's not traditional business hours. I think, which is interesting in looking at what is the role of procurement. I think traditionally it had been known as the cost-cutting people, right? How do you get the lowest bid? How do you, find companies that are going to deliver on cost criteria? As we're looking at this now, increasingly, they're much more strategic and used as the ability, as Therese said, is really to source the best companies, whether it's a service company or it's a manufacturing company, whatever it is finding the best. And I think one thing that's interesting, and even in my company, we've been involved, of course, in brand marketers and applying it to ourselves. The thing that's interesting about this is, going the digital route with digital marketing, it levels the playing field for small business selling to big business. Building off Therese, she had talked about Apple, others. I mean, we had IBM, major Fortune 250 companies that frankly, in Abbott Labs, had we not had the digital presence, we would have never gotten in the door. And this was years ago, only increasing now. And so what's important is the content, the quality of the content, which Therese can talk about later, the quality, the relevancy to the audience. It isn't just putting content on, it's really thoughtful thinking about your target audiences and who you want to acquire as clients or customers, is what's important to them and timely to set you apart. So as we take a look at this, I found this study a couple years ago really fascinating to take a look at thought leadership. We've heard a lot about it. It's been in the media quite a bit in B2B. But this landmark study was done, a joint effort between LinkedIn and Edelman. And what was really interesting is the sample size was very significant. Over 1,300 executives, as you'll see online, C-suite VPs, chief experience officers, managers, and directors, and for a wide range of industries. And significantly, 45% of these companies had a very large employee base of 5,000 or more. So I'm going to walk you through some of the highlight findings that are very relevant to our conversation. So in this survey of these executives, these are the 5 key learnings. The thought leadership, which is really related to how you're positioning your company to be the best in their field, have a distinctive point of view with expertise that you can share with customers or clients, influence the entire purchase process. It does, as Therese said, create RFP opportunities in preference from influencing buyers right from the awareness stage. They're starting to engage with your content when they have time to do so. And they're shaping the perceptions, what they think about you and your company. And they spend time on it, which we found was considerable. It's not just spending a couple of minutes online or necessarily, delegating this off to their procurement. They too spend time online. They use it in the study they found to really vet organizations that they want to get to the small consideration set for RFPs and for conversation. And importantly, a key finding is they want to understand your particular point of view on a particular business problem that they have that they are looking to consultants or companies to help them solve. Finally, about 41% of these C-suite executives did include a company in an RFP. And important to know, they had no knowledge in this study of these companies before they went online. So it wasn't like they were called on by their sales force, which is another key. This is an interesting finding, the last one, is that close to half of decision makers were so influenced by content, thought leadership, and frankly, let's call it impressed. By the time they contacted the companies for more in-depth meetings about their product, those vendors could command a premium price, which I think is pretty interesting when you think of the role of procurement in companies. And clearly the finding there is they want to get the best. So as we look at in the remaining slides of why now, Therese and I had a long conversation about what do we think is going to happen in the post-COVID environment. And frankly, as you look at the literature, and of course we all know as very experienced business people, the business owners in all companies, us and certainly the people that we want to sell to, are going to focus all their attention on ramping up their business, how to stabilize it, how to try growth, how they're going to look for trying to recoup losses, and they're not going to have time for sales calls. I think that's probably a realistic assumption. And so with all this business interruption that's been going on with the companies that we all need and want to grow our business in this disruptive environment, they're spending a lot of time on social. There's a lot of information about spending time on LinkedIn, trade publications. They probably have more time now than ever to spend reading and really getting a sense of who are the thought leaders and people of some solutions. And so it's important that, every company, including yours, has a digital presence and content that is going to be where they are and get in front of people who may not be interested in buying now, but certainly they're beginning to formulate plans as they start coming out of this business situation we're all in right now. So as we go to the next, I'm going to wrap up with what is really the critical ingredients, must-haves for a high-performance digital program. So I think, our view is there's always going to be a role for direct sales, and that's important. But as we look at, what are the high-performance programs? And I think we'll start out with, first of all, it's not a tactic, it's a program. And there's a real difference between deploying an email campaign or deploying some social media content and having a very thoughtful program that's established for the year or quarter that's fully integrated. It's informed by strategy about, first of all, understanding your buyers and what's important to them. And from the strategy is really designing content that is going to set you apart and provide a couple of things for people who go, I really didn't think about that before, or that is such an interesting point, or that validates something that I've been wondering about, that really gets people involved. And of course, it's measurable. The second is data. You know, how do you get data from your digital program to understand your target audiences? You can, with great information, get real-time information about who's responding. If you have a program that's really dedicated against certain potential targets, you're going to be able to see if it's working or not. Content we talked about, and that is really across many different ways it's delivered via social media channels, email marketing, blog post, on the media, you know, and PR, traditional PR, you can get out studies or content. You know, we, you know, in our business and recommend our clients is to really recommend that you create a robust content calendar, at least for a quarter at a time, where every single week, you know, you're deploying at least 2 to 3 pieces of content that is relevant. If you can do more, that's even better. But at least really have a program that's firing every week. The other must-haves are engagement tracking. Of course, you want to know the response you're getting back from your program, and you can track historical engagement. You can see which content resonated or not. And then, you know, from an overall using key performance indicators in your business, it also applies to digital. How do you define what you want to measure and how to optimize it? And the last thing is really talent. We all have digital departments, and I think an important consideration for you as a business owner is understanding, do the people who are running your digital program, how experienced are they? To what extent are they using the program as a tactic or a program? How are they looking at success and monitoring it? And really making sure, if you're investing more and more of your dollars in digital, that you have talent who has the experience or training, or use outside talent as well, to make sure that you are deploying everything as effectively as you see with Therese's program. So as far as we're looking at how, from a technology standpoint, there are a number of different things. Of course, we're going to share this presentation, optimize. You're going to hear that word optimize quite a bit. It's optimizing the content. It's optimizing, making sure that when you have search words and people are looking for a certain kind of consultancy or a manufacturer or real estate, that you have search words that are going to find their way to your website. They will find you, which is so important. Having a responsive website, and importantly, it's optimized for digital, for mobile, is really important, because increasingly you're finding people are using their phone, not at their desktop when they're doing this research, which is interesting. Google Analytics, important, that really measures every day, every hour, how your online presence is either growing or not. And if your content is driving those analytics and the people you want to see, you can actually see it on a daily basis. Google Ads, there are certain search terms that you need to use and buy in your advertising program. They're going to sync up with what you do. And then finally, there's the programs like Sprout Social for social media and CRM such as Hotspot. So these are all, and by the way, this is a pretty extensive list, but it is a pretty, you know, robust but must-haves that all need to be integrated into a program that's going to be really effective for you. So as we wrap up, we're going to talk about some examples of what not to do in today's environment. You probably all were spending, if you're talking about, more time online. And, you know, I think in the early weeks of COVID, it was interesting to see as a marketer, even email coming to me, email content that's tone deaf. It really doesn't seem, it's like business as usual. Poor timing or overly aggressive follow-up online, especially for cold calls or cold emails. And, you know, insensitivity, you know, or being actually too gratuitous. I have 2 examples that you hear of what I received myself in the last couple of weeks, which I thought were interesting. One with the, you know, the headline touching me is, "Hi, Carol, we may not be personally related to each other. I just wanted to drop by and wish you and your families good health and safety. And I'd like to circle back on my email last week." I mean, I think that's kind of an example where you see it's an attempt to be able to reach out, but from a timing standpoint, it goes into the cell right away. So in the last slide, we're going to talk a little bit about, you know, key takeaways, and then we'll open up for questions of how do we begin to prepare now. And I think the most important thing is to start now. is literally, and using as time is of the essence, to how do you take a look at your existing program? Because sales conditions have been changing and evolving even faster. The ability to be able to get in front of prospects and stay in front of them has never been more important. We're recommending number 2 is for you to take some time with your team to review your sales and digital program now and really determine, as we take a look at some of the criteria, do you have all the pieces, what's missing, what's working well, and really look at allocating more of your dollars to digital if you haven't already. Really to take a look at the deep dive to understand your digital program much more comprehensively, as we talked about earlier in terms of the must-haves. Look at it with a critical eye, and then really revisit the role digital plays in your selling strategy in light of some of the results we have here. And don't wait to make the adjustments because, as we're saying, right now is the best time to be able to ramp up and be visible now in front of prospects, being where they are. And when business starts to turn, you already will have a program in place to turn on and have even more of a visibility and have more lead gen happening as we're all getting adjusted to it. So that is our overview, and thank you so much.